This is an NA Miata. They were produced from 1998 to 1997, and they're considered a roadster. We bought it on September 6th, 2024, and now, 100 days later, a little over because my PC shat the bed, and I also keep getting sick. I'm sick right now if you can't hear it in my voice. I'm going to talk about the positives and negatives of owning one, things we've run into, and what to do if you're considering buying one yourself. Which, yeah, let's start with that. These things are relatively common to find online, and most of them are pretty used up. They're old-ass cars, it's to be expected. However, if you find one in good condition and can afford it, then I say go for it. I'm also not a money expert, but buy these things with cash on hand, a planned budget, and extra money if things go wrong. This was our first mistake when buying this thing. We bought it with cash on hand so we wouldn't have any debt, but we didn't have a budget planned, and we also didn't have any money set aside for it in case something bad happened to it. Going into 2025, we're gonna correct this mistake by putting money aside each month that we'll put into the car. And you need to do this before you buy a new car. This does delay the gratification you want in purchasing a vehicle, but it does help out in the long run. And the good thing is these things are cheap and you can find parts for them literally everywhere online. Another great thing about these cars is everyone and their mothers have worked on them before. No, not really, but this does mean that you can find a tutorial for just about everything about this car. It doesn't matter how obscure the issue is. I can assure you that someone who's had the same issue cried on a Miata forum and then others helped them out with it. We have yet to have a single problem in which the internet hasn't helped us out. So repairs, maintenance, and upkeep are made all the easier. So, you're dead set on buying one. Here's another mistake that my girlfriend and I made when choosing which one to buy. Make sure the car is in actually good running condition. Unless you want a challenge so you buy yourself a shell without an engine, there are general procedures that you should follow when buying a used car. We did not do this, so we're slowly discovering issues that the last owner kept hidden from us when we purchased the vehicle. I'm gonna link a list of things in the description to look out for when buying a used car, but the bottom line is don't make an impulse buy, especially one as expensive as a car. Our Miata is a 1993 with a 1.8 liter engine swapped in, an aftermarket exhaust, new rims, and a manual swap. Other than those things, the car is completely stock. It's been repainted and looks okay, and we also got it a new windshield recently. All of the mods that we've done and have planned are changing out stock parts for the same parts but in better condition or something that's slightly better. We haven't been able to do anything exciting yet because, again, we didn't budget this out. However, we do have tons of parts for both the interior and exterior. So if you want to see the progress of the car, you can watch our progress on Instagram and YouTube Shorts. Owning the car has had its obvious ups and downsides. As I said before, it's a relatively cheap car to own, and there's not an issue that the car will have that someone else hasn't seen and fixed online. It makes the most random issues that we have a little less stressful because we can pinpoint exactly what it is thanks to the internet. And again, as I said, because it's not terribly expensive for a car, upkeep is pretty alright. However, there are of course things that are still expensive about the car. I would recommend finding a Miata with a hardtop because these things are running around $2 grand right now, which is half the price of what we paid for the car itself. The car is also compact, which makes riding in it a completely different experience than anything I've been in before. This has been my daily for 5 years, so going from an American SUV to a Japanese coupe is wildly different and pretty fun. But don't expect to get good performance from these things unless you put some serious work into the engine. They're slow as shit. Also, we don't have power steering, so parking is a bitch. Despite them being pretty shit in terms of performance, these cars are still really fun to drive, and they're also great starting cars if you've never driven a manual before. I'm new to all this car stuff. I've never worked on a car before, nor have I done something as simple as changing a tire. My girlfriend has been teaching me all the ins and outs of cars, including teaching me manual, and according to her, I've picked it up pretty fast considering I've only driven it 3 times. Speaking of driving, the gas mileage is pretty good. It doesn't take a lot, but it also doesn't use a lot. So when gas prices go up, it'll hurt, but not as much as when you drive an SUV. Yeah. Oh, and remember when I said you can find parts everywhere for this thing? Well, that includes brand new parts that people have created just for the car, including interior and exterior parts. New lights, a new body, new interior, coilovers, engine bits, you name it. You can almost entirely replace every part in these cars with something brand new. Alright, I've been glazing this car for a bit. Now we have to get into some of the negatives. And the most obvious is that these things are old. I'm fortunate enough that despite owning an '08, my parents are still paying for repairs because I'm still in college. However, this isn't something everyone has, so if my parents didn't do this, then my girlfriend and I wouldn't have any reliable cars. I mean, for fuck's sake, this thing has a fucking check engine light right now. Anyways, my point being is that you need to have something reliable because you never know when this thing is going to start ticking or it's going to leak or the brakes are going to go out, whatever comes up. It's old and a project car, meaning it's not reliable. Meaning you should have one other car that you can use when this thing is sitting on jack stands and being worked on. Another big thing about it being old is that these cars are notorious for rust issues, especially in places that you can't necessarily see, which can end up totaling the car in the future if you don't catch it. So again, before you buy, make sure you're checking everything on the list in the description as well as checking for things like rust. Finally, I know I said that this car is pretty cheap and parts for it are pretty cheap too, but it's still a car and the parts are still for a car. Parts still cost upwards of a few $100s, sometimes even a few $1,000s, so that's why I said earlier in the video that you're gonna wanna have a budget and you're gonna wanna have money that was previously set aside for the car. So if you can do these things before buying the car, you'll be set and you won't be worrying as much. But if you were dumb like us, then you're gonna have times where you're gonna be sitting around for a bit waiting for parts, and you'll also probably not be able to drive the car for a little bit. So yeah, for this being our first project car, we've definitely been learning things as we go. But it's been a fun experience. It's an easy car to work on and it's not terribly expensive, but it still costs a good amount of money, and you're gonna need something else that's reliable because there will be times when you first get it that you're not gonna be able to drive it for a bit. Otherwise, it's a fun, cute, slow-ass car that I'd say is a great first car to work on if you wanna get into the car scene.